Thank you. So strong words. Um, what action have you seen, Louisa, that you think that we are actually on the right road, that we are doing something that is right to tackle this problem?
Um, well, I think we need to differentiate a bit because whether we are on the right road, um, has to do with the physics, with the emissions, with the inequality. Um, I'm not sure my video is
No,
stopped, but I'll just
you're
continue.
okay.
Ah,
We can
right,
see you.
okay. Yeah, I think it has to do more with, what the science tells us, what the realities show us. And as Kumi, I think, really, importantly pointed out, that is not the right road or so. But what we're also seeing, and I think that is a different story that we are telling right now, is that people not, quietly watching as things fall apart even more as we are rushing into a new fossil fuel era, but people are uprising, and that is a very, very, very important aspect to that. And we're seeing, and I think that's the beauty of resistance, really. We're seeing that people, going down every single road we can imagine. So in Germany alone, we organized mass protests for hundreds of weeks. But then at some point we decided it was also time to sue a government. And so we did that and went in front of the Constitutional Court, suing successfully the German government over our right to climate justice here and around the world. And the beauty of that decision of the court is that it doesn't only apply to governments, but also to industries. So it's, very importantly pointing out that companies don't have more rights than states. So if states need to stick to the Paris Agreement and to a carbon budget, so do industries, so do companies. And it is weird that we often, assuming that we just have to be, nice to companies, that they might at some point, show the audacity to do some kind of climate action. No, that's not how it's working out. The Paris Accord accounts for everyone, for them too, and that's what the Constitutional Court made clear. And then we're also seeing, people really celebrating the diversity of actions that is out there. Everything from, peaceful civil disobedience, to blockades, to mass actions, to artivism, so to art and activism combined, as Kumi pointed out. At some point in Berlin, we painted one entire big bridge in the city center, showing what another world could look like, creating a moment of peace and love for this wonderful world that we could create together. We are seeing, intergenerational alliances growing everywhere, people coming up in the most unlikely settings, in the most unlikely places, union workers and nurses and bus drivers and school children bonding up over the idea that it could be simply, much better out there and just and peaceful and safe for everyone. And if one thing, the war in Ukraine, which is very, just geographically spoken, very close to me, it's just some hundreds kilometers away from Berlin. The war in Ukraine has sparked this. It has also shown, of course, the hypocrisy about some wars being so much in the light and some aren't. But maybe it is also a lesson that we can mobilize this deep humane empathy within us, and maybe it sparks that moment where we realize that we won't ever be truly free as long as there are fossil fuels that we depend on.
Thank you. Andrea, anything you would like to add on this subject of concrete actions and inspiration?
So firstly, we have to stop fossil fuel use now. There is really no option. And again, I talk about solutions and innovation, and we have industries that are absolutely able to transition, and they can do that. And we need to do it really quickly to give us time to actually get the system changes that have been talked about. But I also want to talk about from a generational point of view, because, I'm a little bit at the other end, and, I've been around for a while. And I guess people have said to me, why are you actually optimistic? Well, I'm optimistic because I have seen improvements over time, that where you have seen pollution of rivers, etc., there have been actions to clean it up. There have been approaches to actually put in place appropriate food systems to improve food security, empowering women who've actually then improved agricultural yields. We've seen from a scientific point of view reductions in persistent organics, both in us but also in the environment. So there are all sorts of examples that we can draw on from the global to the local where there have been positive change. We just need a lot more of it, and we actually need to communicate in those places where there is a lot of poverty, etc., and we need to provide the investment and the funding to actually support those communities to actually start to come out of those areas, and also then to protect the environment at the same time, because it's all of our environment. It's one environment, whether you're talking about the atmosphere, the water systems, it's all interconnected. So we actually have an obligation wherever we are to actually look at environment protection.
Thank you. Dr. Nadia, you mentioned the press, and you mentioned false information as well. What is the way to tackle this? Because I think it can influence a lot of the actions of the struggle, right? We're talking about the information that is passing from country to country, from generation to generation. Can you enlighten us a little bit about that? What you think we should do? We can't hear you.
I beg your pardon. If I can add one comment in terms of things that inspire on a slightly lighter note, before I dive into the question of information. I think that the things that should inspire us most are things that give us double, triple, and quadruple wins. What I mean by that is when we engage in a climate intervention, we must ask, does it create jobs? Does it improve gender equality? Does it improve energy independence and so on? If we have a more intersectional approach, that will work well. And so, like, for example, I was addressing the African Union on the 50th anniversary at the Mo Ibrahim Foundation event, and I found myself saying to leaders on the African continent, I said, listen, I've discovered in places like Uppsala, Sweden, and Bristol, England, they run the buses on human feces, right? Which is shit, poo, crap, whatever you call it in the different cultural context. And I said, I refuse to accept that European shit is better than African shit. We just have to get our shit together and turn the crisis of climate change into opportunity. And if you take the question of human waste, feces as well as urine, the non-safe disposal of that creates whole lots of other problems, disease, and impacting our water and so on. So when we look for solutions that can give us double wins, that is what inspires me, because that means that people will gravitate to it more. In terms of the media situation, you're absolutely right that the biggest challenge we face is not the repressive state apparatus, even though 4 environmental activists get killed every week at the moment, on average. Bad as it is, the biggest challenge we face is the ideological state apparatus, by which we mean the framework for education, the framework for religion, funding of arts and culture, and most importantly, the framework for communications and media. So, when you look at a country like the United States, which is supposed to be a bastion of democracy, and you got 40% of the people who are watching Fox News, where Fox believes that not only do they have the right to their own opinions, but they have the right to their own facts, what they call alternative facts, right? This mass and the regulatory environment cannot call them out, then you got a deep problem. And the way we address that, the biggest thing we have to learn from the right wing and the conservative forces that have been holding back climate action is that we in the climate movement are always targeting our messages to the head. Percentages, degrees, parts per million, all of that. Now that is important that we advocate on the basis of facts and truth. However, the right wing doesn't bother with facts, right? They just target the heart. They go for emotions and passions and so on, whether it's on promoting racism or whatever. So part of what the progressive climate movement needs to do is stay true to facts, but use artivism, whether it's music, whether it's song, whether it's dance, whether it's gaming, because 1.5 billion people in the world are spending huge amounts of time on gaming. We need to look at where the cultural realities of people are and communicate in the languages that people actually understand. When I was at Greenpeace, I was occupying a rig in the Greenlandic Arctic, and I had a placard that said "Stop Arctic Destruction." And I'm not a good swimmer, so I was a bit anxious, and one of my colleagues said, "No, don't worry, if you fall, we'll rescue you in time," and so on. And I thought, if that was the last action that I was engaged in, most of my friends and family and comrades back in Africa will not understand what Stop Arctic Destruction meant. And one of the kids, when I came out of prison in my family, said, Uncle Kumi, a better slogan would be "Save Santa Claus Now." Right? And if you think about it, it was absolutely brilliant. And one of the things the climate movement must do is stop projecting our consciousness on the people that we're trying to win over, humble ourselves, understand where people are, and build a messaging from there if we're going to win. Thank you.
Thank you. Louisa, a little bit more practicality. What would you advise corporations, and do you think they are truly capable of change?
Well, technically, of course, everyone is capable of change. I think the question is change towards what? And I think, I think with the climate crisis, with the ecological emergency, and I think Andrea Hinwood made a really important point about, that being actually a triple crisis we're in, that we must see holistically. Not many things are black and white, but I guess some things are black and white, and a company that is running on the concept of destruction and exploitation, that is on the wrong side of this. And unless you really change your, the logic under which you operate away from exploitation and destruction, you will have a hard time changing the sides there. And we see that. And we're not being blinded by greenwashing efforts that are skyrocketing right now, and the nice green flyers and the hashtags and the sustainability officers and reports and so on. We see that. We see through that. Yet, of course, in a climate justice economy that is based on values, that is based on human rights, that is based on dignity, and the idea that there is boundaries in this planet. We need players in the economy as well. And so, of course, the floor is open. We're looking for those who create those changes, who aim to be that example for which others can thrive after. Yet, what we can't deal with, what we don't have time for, are half-hearted solutions. Just wanting to be, a good player, wanting to be on the good side isn't enough, to be honest. And and we don't have any time to waste. So we are calling out everyone that pretends to change side while actually just hiding more exploitation that is going on. And we're applauding everyone who's really doing something to create an economy that is based not on exploitation, but on actual values and actual respect for people and for planet. And I think there is a whole arena to explore.